Hey viewers, it's Saturday, July 9th, and we're about 5 minutes from kickoff on the Montreal-Saskatchewan game. Now, Montreal won't talk about a three-peat, even though it's what's on the collective mind of every single person who watches this league. The last time such a feat was accomplished was the late 70s to early 80s Eskimos, and the last time it was against the same opponent each time was the 1950s Eskimos against the Alouettes. Now, is the biggest obstacle to a three-peat for the Als the Saskatchewan Roughriders? It would appear so. This particular rivalry has become one of the most compelling to watch. Atonement always seems to be in the back of the Riders' minds. Well, let's talk about Montreal's offense. Anthony Calvillo is now in his 18th year as a CFL quarterback, and later this season, barring injury, will pass Damon Allen for most all-time passing yards. And even with the absence of Ben Cahoon in the slot and Avon Cobourne in the backfield, Calvillo has a very talented slate of receivers and backs. S.J. Green, Jamal Richardson, and newcomer Brandon London have done a great job of filling in the holes left by Cahoon and the injured Kerry Watkins. In the backfield, Brandon Whitaker has taken over for Cobourne and fills those shoes with a little bit different style. With 119 yards on 17 carries against BC last week, it appears he's doing very well. On the defensive side of the ball, the Als lost the veteran defensive back Gerald Brown to a fractured ankle, opening the door for Billy Parker to reestablish himself as the guy in the secondary and letting DeAndre Dix come back into the starting lineup. That secondary doesn't need to be reminded that Darian Durant threw 3 interceptions against the Eskimos last week. And those ballhawks are getting hungry. Finally, let's talk about special teams. They've given up 3 kick return touchdowns in the past 2 games. Now, for any team, that's a poor performance, but for a defending Grey Cup champion team, that is simply unacceptable. They're going to have to tighten up big time against the Riders. As for the Riders, after being beaten down last week, there are a lot more questions than answers. The main one being, was that a blip on the radar, or is that bad news for things to come? And where do they go from here? Well, Darian Durant was responsible for throwing 3 interceptions and had an almost comical, unforced fumble in last week's embarrassing loss to the Eskimos, and had no problem taking responsibility for it. Now, even with 3 receivers sidelined with injury, Rob Bagg with his knee, Kerry Koch's thumb, and now Ernie Wheelwright's knee, and with the departure of Andy Fantuz, Durant still needs to be more accurate and more controlled. Weston Dressler and hometown boy Jason Claremont need to continue to step up for the big plays, as well as the nickel and diming for the crucial first downs. Wes Cates needs to be leaned on by the offense while the receiving core gets healthy again. Defensively, the Riders seem to have a problem. Chris McKenzie and Tad Kornegay are sitting on the bench again this week with injury, meaning John Eubanks and Tristan Jackson will be asked to step up. Anthony Calvillo can and will turn these new guys inside out, making for another long, hard game for the Riders. As for the defensive line, Coach Greg Marshall called their play last week soft. Nobody on the line showed up to play, and they were exploited by the Eskimos. Improvements must be made on the line, and the problem must be solved if they want to hold their own against the Als. This week, I give it to Montreal on the strength of their offense and on the weakness of the Rider D.